That is a story we are giving you right now, just breaking. David Kenani Maraga has been nominated unanimously by commissioners of the Judicial Service Commission for the position of Chief Justice, the second Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, to replace retired Chief Justice Willie Mutunga. And David Kenani Maraga is an appeals court judge heading the courts in Kisumu, and he was among those who were shortlisted for the position of Chief Justice when the interviews were ongoing. Some of the things that came out very clearly were his staunch beliefs when it comes to issues like abortion, and he is a member of the SDA Church. And at some point in the interview, he was asked whether if a court case ran till Saturday, whether he would report to work, and he vehemently denied, said he will do no such thing, being a member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And these are just some of the things that stood out when it came to the interview of David Kenani Maraga, who has now been nominated. A total of about 14 members or a number of 7 were shortlisted, a number of 7 were not. But after a court case, Justice George Odunga ruled that all those who had applied for this particular job should be interviewed, and a total of 14 had applied for this particular job of Chief Justice. David Maraga was one of those who had been shortlisted, and we will definitely be bringing you more details of David Maraga, a Court of Appeals judge. And our reporter Timothy Otieno is in Karen, where the Judicial Service Commission was meeting, and just broke this news. Let's link up with Timothy Otieno from Karen with more details. A very good afternoon to you, Timothy. Many thanks for joining us. And I would just want to pick your brain on some of the things that have been said there by the commissioners of the Judicial Service Commission on why they picked David Kenani Maraga as the next Chief Justice of the country.
Well, basically, to be blunt with you, Akisa, they say that David Maraga was the best candidate out of those who presented themselves from this petition. And even as we were later on told by Tom Ojienda, it was a decision that most of the commissioners did support almost unanimously over the fact that David Maraga stood out from the crowd and has since been nominated for the position of the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya. But of course, the announcement being made by the Judicial Service Commission chairperson, Professor Margaret Kobia, a very brief and short message, barely less than 3 minutes, and they had said that, of course, they have nominated his name, and his name has since been forwarded to the President of the Republic of Kenya, who was aware of the nomination, and now there's just going to be following up on the other exercises. Of course, the President is expected to present that name to Parliament, upon which Parliament will then deliberate and either approve the nomination or reject it, and that of course is in the coming days as expected. But of course, Akisa, the members of the Judicial Service Commission did of course hold a meeting here at the Karen for the better part of the morning, about 4 or 5 hours into the meeting, and when they came out, the body language indeed did speak of that, of a commission speaking in one voice. I remember even asking Professor Githu Muigai just shortly after they left the meeting on whether indeed there was white smoke or black smoke, and in which, of course, he replied gallantly, saying that indeed there was white smoke and the country would be expected to have one of the names listed, and that name turns out to be David Maraga, who has been nominated for that position, Akisa.
Now, as you've mentioned that they say he was the best placed, I don't know, what are some of the qualities? Yes, they say that he stood out of the crowd, but what are some of the qualities that really drove this particular commissioners towards David Maraga, that they would entrust him with this very huge seat of heading, or huge responsibility of heading the judiciary?
I think what drove the commission to selecting David Maraga was basically his temperament and the fact that he appears to have been the one who had the highest standard of integrity. You have mentioned that he had declined, that he would not sit on a Saturday based on the fact that his religion does not allow him on that day, because it's a special day of worship for the members of the Seventh-day Adventists. And perhaps it is such qualities that that endeared him to the commission. And of course, apart from the issues of temperament, him being a member who has served within the courts of the country, decisions that he made during previous cases and previous judgments may have endeared him to the commission as well. If you keenly followed the vetting process and the interrogation process, for those, especially those who had served under Kenya's judiciary, including Al-Nashir Visram, Jackton Ojwang, as well as Smokin Wanjala, they were brought to task with some of the decisions they had made in their lifetime and in their profession, serving as judges of various courts within the country. And David Maraga was not an exception to that kind of vetting. And what apparently seems to have stood out was the fact that he was a man of integrity and his temperament stood out. But of course, here this afternoon, they did not go into the details as to what aspects of the interrogation with David Maraga stood out. But of course, as you heard, they did mention that he was one of those who was among the best from the crop of those who had expressed interest in heading and being the president of the Supreme Court of the nation. Akisa.
Well, Timothy, this is just a nomination, a name proposed that will be given to the president. But kindly just take us through the process from now, when the JSC has nominated a name, to when it gets to the president, when it gets to parliament. What happens if probably the name is rejected? Just take us through that process of possibilities.
Well, the possibilities as it stands now, the name has been forwarded to the president. It remains the task of the president to forward it to the National Assembly, who, if I'm not wrong, will have about 28 days to deliberate on this. The National Assembly, of course, having the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee headed by Samuel Chepkonga, will deliberate on whether they deem the nomination of David Maraga as being fit. Once that committee has come up with a report in which it will present to the National Assembly, then there comes the time for the vote of whether the National Assembly does approve of the nominee or not. When it is if the National Assembly does indeed approve, then the name will go back to the president for ascension and, of course, ratification, for lack of a better term, so to speak. But if the National Assembly does not agree with what the Judicial Service Commission has decided this afternoon, then the name will have to go back to the president, and the president will have to revert it back to the Judicial Service Commission, and possibly the process could begin yet again. Not too sure about it, whether the commission will indeed have to begin fresh vetting exercise for people interested in the position of the Chief Justice. Akisa.
All right, thank you very much. Of course, we'll be coming back later on to you. That is Timothy Otieno joining us from Karen, where an announcement has just been made by the Judicial Service Commission on the name they propose or the person they nominate to be the next Chief Justice to head the Supreme Court and the judiciary at large, and that is David Kenani Maraga, who was one of those who were shortlisted for this particular position. David Maraga was just in the news yesterday when he was in State House, Nairobi, with the tribunal investigating Justice or Judge Joseph Mutava, who was suspended, and David Maraga was heading that team as an appellate court judge. He hails from Nyamira County, and this would probably be good news for those who are from that particular region. David Maraga has been in the judiciary for quite a long time, and he has headed a number of commissions in the judiciary, and that is a name that has been given out to the president. And as Timothy Otieno tells us, the name will be forwarded to the president, who in turn will forward it to the National Assembly, where we will know whether it will be a nod from the president and the National Assembly or not. And if you can remember, at some point there was a legal contest on whether the president should be given 3 names or 1 name of that particular process, whether he should be given 3 names to pick one of whom would be the Chief Justice. But many said that this would undermine the judiciary and would bring in conflict of interest. Hence the reason why we now have 1 name that will be presented to the president, who will in turn forward it to the National Assembly for a nod. But as it stands, the Judicial Service Commission has nominated David Kenani Maraga for the position of Chief Justice. Let's just take a look at how the interviews went when he was interviewed, some of the questions that he had to contend with, and some of the very smart answers that he came out with during the interview with the JSC for this particular position.
Honorable Commissioner, is that it is not the position of the person you are dealing with. that should be given primacy in the what you are dealing with. If you look at my CV, I have been involved in building of churches in literally all over the country, from Kinango, Kitui, I mean all these places. Under Pillar 1 is access to justice. The enactment of the Legal Aid Act. As Chief Justice, if I'm given an opportunity to be a Chief Justice, that's one of the acts I will operationalize very, very fast. If you don't have money to get lawyers to represent indigent litigants or convicted persons, the court will not move. For example, if you look at the Marriage Act, the new Marriage Act, and even I believe it's so to the Constitution, marriage is between a man and a woman. So you will go by those principles. Others of intersex, that one is a completely different aspect. These are not people who have chosen to be what they are. And the law should deal with them differently. It's not easy to say that, but you see, the Constitution itself states that life is sacred. Life is sacred, and as you have rightly put it, euthanasia is not a legal action in our country.
So would that judge say?
All right, so that is just how it went down during the interviews about a week ago, barely a fortnight ago, for Judge David Maraga, or Justice David Maraga, who heads the appellate court in Kisumu. And among the contentious issues that he was asked about during that interview included abortion, same-sex marriages, and whether he would work on a Saturday, being a Seventh-day Adventist, staunch a Seventh-day Adventist member. And this is some of the issues where religion came first for him, and quite impressive for a number of people, for a number no, but these are some of the things that stood out during the interview of David Kenani Maraga before the Judicial Service Commission while he was being interviewed for the position of Chief Justice. The Judicial Service Commission almost unanimously has nominated David Maraga for that particular position. He is an appellate judge. He has been for a while now, and he is the head of the appellate court in Kisumu. And if all goes well for him, he will be the second Chief Justice just after the promulgation of the Constitution in 2010, and he will be succeeding Dr. Willie Mutunga. And his appointment comes barely 10 months as the country heads into the general elections, so probably he will be coming into a full entree as the Chief Justice. Of course, the process of finding the Deputy Chief Justice continues, as interviews will be carried out next week by the Judicial Service Commission. But as mentioned earlier by our reporter on the ground, Timothy Otieno, that this particular process, the name will now be forwarded to the President, already has been forwarded to the President, who will then forward it to the National Assembly for the process to be complete before he officially assumes office, if he gets a nod from the President and the National Assembly. So we will definitely be taking a look at how that goes for him, but we'll also be getting reactions from the western part of this country, where there was a lot of anticipation or hope that Supreme Court Judge Justice Smokin Wanjala will be named as the Chief Justice. Our reporter Robert Wanyonyi is on the ground. Will be bringing us a reaction of those in that part of the country, and I understand we have him. A very good afternoon to you, Robert. Many thanks for joining us. Many had hoped that, in that particular region especially, had hoped that Justice Smokin Wanjala would be the man for the top job. Just what is the general feeling there right now?
Thank you very much, studio. In fact, we are here in Funyola, just a few meters from Justice Smokin Wanjala's home, where behind me you can see there is a building where inside there we have Luya elders who are meeting there. And their meeting was sort of like also to offer prayers for their son, hoping that he was going to land the coveted position. But now, having heard the news that have come in, many of them have shown some shock, disappointment, and others are just surprised because talking to them, many are saying that looking at the panel that interviewed the candidates, they feel that Justice Smokin Wanjala was the best candidate among the rest. So they say, as far as it's still the prerogative of the committee that did the job, and also the prerogative of the president, but they say that as the community, they are still surprised that they didn't get this position.
Now, I don't know whether you've been able to speak to some of the residents or even the elders who you say are still holed up in a meeting. I know there was a lot of hope, but what exactly are they saying? Do they think it was fair? What exactly are they saying?
According to the residents that we have spoken to in Funyula Market, which is the nearest trading center from Smokin Wanjala's homestead, and also the elders that we have spoken to, they feel that Judge Smokin Wanjala put up a very, very strong showing at the panel, and they feel that maybe there are other factors that might have determined the next CJ. But according to them, from what they feel is that they still believe he was the best candidate. So the naming of the other judge has come as a surprise to them, but they still say that's beyond them because it has already been done, and now they will just continue waiting maybe for another opportunity that might crop up.
Well, and as you mentioned that the elders are meeting and were probably holding prayers for their son. Do we expect them to make any address, any announcement for the elders?
Yes, after this, we are expecting them to come out and address us. We are here, and they are finishing the meeting, and then come out to address us and tell us about their expectations now that what they had hoped for has not come to pass, and now they are saying that they will address and give us the way forward as a community, and what they expect maybe the losers of the CJ position maybe to engage in or do now that they are not getting the position, because theirs, as they say, is supposed to be an advisory role. So we are still waiting for them to finish their meeting and come out and talk to us.
Have come out. I don't know whether they're the ones, but I will let you try and get more information from there before we speak to you again. And as we're breaking this story for you, let's just get some details of Justice David Maraga, the 64-year-old presiding judge of the Court of Appeal in Kisumu, and he was appointed to the High Court in October 2003, has been working now since 2003 to 2016. That is about 13 years. And to the Court of Appeal, he was appointed in 2011 before rising to the position of presiding judge of the Court of Appeal in Kisumu, the position that he still holds and probably won't be holding for long if this particular nomination by the Judicial Service Commission will be upheld. He holds a degree in law and a master's in law, both from the University of Nairobi. Justice David Maraga also chairs the Judiciary Committee on Elections that is tasked with overseeing election petition hearing that may arise after the 2017 elections. This is quite interesting. This is a particular committee that he chairs that would be taking a look at cases that may arise after the 2017 elections, but he might be the man at the helm when we get to the 2017 elections and the aftermath. There is and there could be very many election petitions that may arise from there, but if he is the man at the top job, probably he will be entrusted with this, seeing as he heads that particular committee. But let's now head over to our Super Bowl and take a look at some of the information we have. 64-year-old David Maraga, he is the presiding judge of the Court of Appeal. In 2011, as I mentioned, he was appointed to the Court of Appeal and is chairing the Judiciary Committee on Elections. And of course, he was appointed to the High Court in 2003 before before being appointed to the Court of Appeal in 2011. And he holds a law degree, all right. In 2003, he was appointed the High Court judge and hails from Nyamira County. A place called, he hails from Nyamira County, Bonyamatutu. I hope I've gotten that name right. That is where Justice David Maraga hails from. And he is a staunch Seventh-day Adventist, something that came out very clearly during the interviews for the CJ before the Judicial Service Commission, given how